Have you ever noticed your child overreacting to small criticisms? Getting deeply hurt by things that seem insignificant? Shutting down when someone disagrees with them? Today, I want to show you what developmental psychology reveals about these warning signs and how they might be indicating emotional wounds that will impact their entire adult life. Hello, I'm here to share insights about family psychology. Today, we're going to understand together why some children develop this extreme emotional sensitivity, what this has to do with how we, as parents, handle their emotions, and most importantly, how to interrupt this cycle before it becomes a permanent pattern. Most parents believe they're protecting their children by correcting mistakes quickly, by minimizing their emotional reactions, by teaching them to toughen up in a challenging world. But research from Harvard's Center on the Developing Child reveals something shocking. These well-intentioned responses often create the exact opposite of what we want. Dr. Daniel Siegel's groundbreaking research at UCLA shows us something remarkable. Children who experience consistent emotional invalidation develop what he calls emotional dysregulation patterns. These patterns don't just affect childhood behavior, they literally shape the developing brain, creating neural pathways that persist into adulthood. Here's what most parents don't realize. When a child's emotional experience is repeatedly dismissed or corrected, their nervous system interprets this as danger. The brain begins developing protective mechanisms, hypervigilance to criticism, chronic fear of making mistakes, an internal belief that their authentic self is somehow unacceptable. The statistics are sobering. Children who experience ongoing emotional invalidation are 40% more likely to develop anxiety disorders as adults. They're 3 times more likely to struggle with intimate relationships. And they carry these patterns into their own parenting, creating generational cycles of emotional wounding. But here's the hopeful truth. Once we understand these patterns, we have incredible power to change them. The same neuroplasticity that allows wounds to form also allows healing to occur. Small shifts in how we respond to our children's emotions can create profound transformations in their development. Traditional parenting wisdom teaches us to focus on behavior modification. Fix the action, fix the child. But modern neuroscience reveals why this approach often backfires, especially with emotionally sensitive children. When we respond to emotional expressions with immediate correction, we're essentially teaching children that their internal experience is wrong, that their feelings are inconvenient problems to be solved, rather than important information to be understood. Dr. John Gottman's longitudinal studies at the University of Washington followed families for over 2 decades. His research identified a crucial pattern. Parents who consistently dismiss or minimize their children's emotions raise children who struggle with emotional regulation throughout their lives. The problem isn't that we want to help our children. The problem is that we're addressing symptoms instead of underlying needs. When a child overreacts to criticism, the symptom is the outburst. The underlying need is for emotional safety and validation. Research from the University of Rochester demonstrates something powerful. Children who receive emotional validation during difficult moments develop stronger prefrontal cortex connections. This is the brain region responsible for emotional regulation, decision-making, and resilience. But when children learn that their emotions are too much or inappropriate, they begin suppressing their authentic responses. This suppression doesn't eliminate the emotions. It drives them underground, where they manifest as anxiety, perfectionism, or emotional explosions. Sign 1. Disproportionate reactions to corrections. Picture this scenario. Your 12-year-old daughter is working on homework. You notice a math error and gently point it out. Instead of simply fixing the mistake, she bursts into tears, declares that she's stupid and can't do anything right, refuses to continue working. This reaction might seem dramatic or manipulative, but developmental psychology reveals what's really happening. Children who react this way to corrections have learned to interpret feedback as threats to their fundamental worth. Dr. Carol Dweck's research at Stanford University identifies this as a fixed mindset pattern. Children begin believing that their abilities are static traits rather than skills that develop through effort. When this belief system forms, any correction feels like evidence of inherent inadequacy. The long-term consequences are significant. These children often become adults who avoid challenges, who interpret workplace feedback as personal attacks, who struggle with imposter syndrome and chronic self-doubt. But here's how you can respond differently. Instead of just pointing out the error, first acknowledge the effort. I can see you've been working really hard on this problem. Let's look at this step together. This approach validates their process while still providing necessary guidance. Research shows that children who receive effort-focused feedback develop greater resilience. They learn that mistakes are learning opportunities rather than character flaws. Their emotional regulation improves because they feel supported rather than judged. The key is timing and tone. Address the emotional reaction first, then the academic content. It sounds like you're feeling frustrated with this problem. That makes sense. It's a challenging one. Would you like to take a break or work through it together? Sign 2. Excessive approval. Seeking behavior. Does your child constantly ask, "Is this good?" Or, "Are you proud of me?" Do they seem unable to feel confident about their efforts without external validation? While wanting parental approval is natural, excessive approval seeking indicates something deeper. It suggests that a child has learned to measure their worth through external feedback rather than internal satisfaction. Dr. Alfie Kohn's research reveals why this pattern develops. When children receive praise primarily for outcomes rather than effort, they become dependent on external validation. Their internal motivation system begins relying on others' opinions rather than personal satisfaction. Children caught in this pattern often become adults who struggle with decision-making. They constantly seek others' approval for their choices. They have difficulty trusting their own judgment or feeling confident in their abilities. Here's a different approach. Instead of immediately praising the result, ask about their experience. How did that feel when you figured out that problem? Or, what was your favorite part about working on this project? This shifts focus from external approval to internal awareness. Children begin noticing their own learning process. They develop confidence based on their effort and growth rather than others' opinions. Research from the University of Rochester shows that children who develop intrinsic motivation are more creative. They're more resilient when facing challenges, and they maintain higher levels of life satisfaction as adults. The transformation happens gradually. Start noticing and commenting on process over product. I noticed how you kept trying different approaches until you found one that worked. This builds internal motivation while still providing encouragement. Sign 3. Negative interpretation of neutral expressions. Your teenager walks into the kitchen where you're reading emails on your phone. Your expression is neutral. You're simply concentrating. But your child immediately asks, "Are you mad at me? Did I do something wrong?" This hypervigilance to others' emotional states often develops in children who've learned that their emotional safety depends on constantly monitoring their environment. Dr. Bruce Perry's research on childhood trauma explains this phenomenon. When children experience chronic emotional uncertainty, their nervous systems become hypervigilant. They begin scanning for threat signals even in safe situations. This pattern creates exhausting anxiety for children. They're constantly trying to read others' emotions to determine their own safety. It also leads to relationship difficulties in adulthood as they interpret neutral expressions as rejection or anger. The solution involves 2 key elements. First, communicate your emotional state clearly. "I'm focused on work right now, but I'm not upset about anything." Second, validate their concern. "I can understand why you might wonder if something was wrong." Research shows that children need explicit emotional communication. What seems obvious to adults is often unclear to developing minds. By naming your emotional state, you provide security and teach emotional vocabulary. Additionally, create predictable check-in times. Every evening after dinner, we'll have 10 minutes to talk about how everyone's day went. This provides structure for emotional connection, reducing the need for constant vigilance. Line 4. Paralyzing perfectionism. Your child spends 3 hours on a homework assignment that should take 30 minutes. They erase and rewrite the same sentence multiple times. They become so focused on making it perfect that they never actually finish. This isn't conscientiousness. This is anxiety masquerading as high standards. Perfectionist children have learned that their worth depends on flawless performance. Dr. Brené Brown's research identifies perfectionism as a shield against shame. Children develop this pattern when they believe that perfect performance will protect them from criticism or disappointment. The long-term costs are severe. Perfectionist children often become adults who procrastinate, who avoid new challenges because they fear imperfect performance, who experience chronic anxiety about meeting impossible standards. Here's how to respond differently. When you notice perfectionist tendencies, address the underlying fear. It seems like you're worried about getting this exactly right. What do you think would happen if it wasn't perfect? Often, children have catastrophic thoughts about imperfection. You'll be disappointed in me, or I'll fail the class. By exploring these fears, you can provide realistic perspective and emotional support. Research shows that children need permission to be imperfect. Create family culture that celebrates effort and learning from mistakes. Share your own imperfect attempts and what you learned from them. Implement good enough standards for everyday tasks. For tonight's homework, let's aim for understanding the concept rather than perfect presentation. This reduces anxiety while maintaining learning goals. Sign 5. Difficulty. Expressing emotional needs. Your child seems fine all day, then explodes in anger over something minor, or they withdraw completely when upset, insisting nothing's wrong while clearly struggling emotionally. This pattern develops when children learn that their emotional needs are burdensome or inappropriate. They begin suppressing authentic feelings until they become overwhelming. Dr. Dan Hughes' research on attachment relationships shows that children need emotional co-regulation. They learn to manage their feelings through consistent, attuned responses from caregivers. When children can't express emotional needs directly, they often communicate through behavior. Emotional explosions, withdrawal, or physical symptoms become their language for unmet needs. The solution involves creating emotional safety. I notice you seem upset. You don't have to talk about it right now, but I want you to know I'm here when you're ready. Research demonstrates that children need explicit permission to have difficult emotions. All feelings are welcome here, even the uncomfortable ones. This creates space for authentic expression. Teach emotional vocabulary gradually. I'm wondering if you might be feeling disappointed about what happened at school. This helps children identify and name their internal experiences. Model emotional expression yourself. I'm feeling frustrated about work today. I think I need to take a few deep breaths and talk to someone about it. This normalizes emotional needs and demonstrates healthy coping. Understanding these warning signs is just the beginning. To create lasting change, we need to understand the psychological mechanisms underneath these patterns. Dr. Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory explains how children's nervous systems respond to emotional threats. When children experience repeated emotional invalidation, their autonomic nervous system shifts into protective modes. Fight, flight, or freeze responses become their default patterns. This isn't conscious behavior. It's automatic nervous system protection. Children aren't choosing to be difficult or oversensitive. Their bodies are responding to perceived threats to their emotional safety. The powerful news is that the same nervous system that creates these patterns can also heal them. Through consistent, attuned responses, we can help children's nervous systems learn that emotional expression is safe. Dr. Alan Shore's research on emotional development reveals something crucial. Children's emotional regulation abilities develop through relationship. They literally borrow our calm nervous systems while learning to regulate their own. This means that our own emotional regulation becomes essential. When we respond to our children's difficult emotions with our own anxiety or frustration, we inadvertently escalate their distress. Research shows that children need us to remain emotionally steady while they experience emotional storms. This doesn't mean being disconnected or cold. It means staying present and calm while they navigate difficult feelings. The transformation happens through repeated experiences of safety during emotional expression. Each time we respond with acceptance rather than correction, we're building new neural pathways of security. The emotional validation protocol research from the University of Washington demonstrates that emotional validation has 5 key components. First, be present. Put down devices and give full attention when your child is struggling emotionally. Second, reflect what you observe. I can see that you're really upset about what happened. This helps children feel seen rather than judged. Third, validate the emotion without necessarily agreeing with the behavior. It makes sense that you'd feel angry when your friend said that. Anger is a natural response to feeling hurt. Fourth, explore the underlying need. What do you think you needed in that moment? This helps children connect emotions to deeper needs and develop emotional intelligence. Fifth, collaborate on solutions. What do you think might help next time you're in a similar situation? This builds problem-solving skills while maintaining emotional support. The neural integration approach, Dr. Daniel Siegel's research on brain development shows that children need help integrating emotional and rational brain regions. During emotional moments, the rational brain goes offline. Our job is to help reconnect these systems. Start with emotional validation to calm the emotional brain. Only after the child feels understood can the rational brain come back online for problem solving. Use storytelling to help children make sense of their experiences. It sounds like you were feeling really excited about showing your project to the class. Then, when someone laughed, your feelings got hurt, and you felt embarrassed. This narrative approach helps children integrate their emotional experiences. They begin understanding their internal world, rather than feeling overwhelmed by it. Creating emotional safety rituals research shows that children need predictable opportunities for emotional connection. Create daily rituals that prioritize emotional attunement over behavior management. Implement emotional check-ins at bedtime. What was the best part of your day? What was the most challenging part? This creates routine opportunities for emotional expression. During difficult moments, use the phrase, "Tell me more about that." This communicates curiosity rather than judgment. Children begin seeing their emotions as important information rather than problems to solve. Practice emotional repair when interactions go poorly. Earlier today, when you were upset, I think I focused on solving the problem instead of understanding your feelings. Can you help me understand what that was like for you? This modeling teaches children that relationships can be repaired, that emotional disconnection isn't permanent, and that everyone is learning and growing. Healing emotional wounds is not a quick process. Children who've developed protective patterns need time and consistent experience to learn new ways of being. Research indicates that neural pathway changes typically require 60-90 days of consistent new experiences. This means that you might not see dramatic changes immediately, but small shifts in your responses will gradually create profound transformations. Expect resistance initially. Children may actually escalate their emotional expressions when you begin responding differently. This is normal. They're testing whether this new approach is genuine and lasting. Dr. Gordon Neufeld's research explains this as counterwill. Children push against new boundaries to ensure they're solid. Stay consistent with your new approach, even when it feels challenging. Celebrate small victories. Notice when your child expresses emotions more directly. Acknowledge when they recover more quickly from disappointment. These incremental changes indicate healing is occurring. Remember that setbacks are part of the process. Stress, Illness or major life changes can temporarily bring back old patterns. This doesn't mean you're failing. It means your child needs extra emotional support during challenging times. This week, implement the emotional mirror technique. When your child expresses difficult emotions, resist the urge to immediately fix or minimize. Instead, simply reflect what you're observing. I can see you're really frustrated right now. It looks like that really hurt your feelings. You seem disappointed about how that turned out. This simple shift validates their emotional experience. It communicates that their feelings matter and make sense, and it creates space for genuine connection instead of immediate problem solving. Notice your own impulses during emotional moments. Do you feel compelled to fix, minimize, or rush past the emotion? These impulses are normal, but often counterproductive. Practice staying present with difficult emotions, both yours and your child's. Emotions are temporary experiences, not permanent states. They contain important information and naturally resolve when properly acknowledged. Track small changes in your child's emotional expression. Are they beginning to share feelings more directly? Are emotional storms shorter in duration? These shifts indicate nervous system healing. Remember, you're not just changing current family dynamics. You're interrupting generational patterns of emotional wounding. You're giving your child tools for emotional regulation that will serve them throughout their lifetime. The changes you make today and how you respond to your child's emotions will ripple forward into their future relationships, their capacity for intimacy, their ability to navigate life's inevitable challenges with resilience rather than reactivity. This is some of the most important work you'll ever do as a parent. Not because it's complicated, but because it's so fundamental to your child's emotional development and future well-being.